Welcome back. It's mid-June. The peaches are ripe and ready for picking. And this year I've decided to make some peach wine. First we're going to need peaches, obviously. These are fresh, fully ripe. Need a fermentation bucket. Now I'm going to be using a mesh bag. Now I'm going to have these clips on here because my mesh bag is a little bit smaller than my bucket. If you have a larger one, you can just fit it over the brim. We're also going to need some sanitizer to sterilize all of our equipment, some Campton tablets. I'm going to need a hydrometer and a thermometer. I've also got some sugar for adjusting our sugar content. Got some distilled water and some bananas. Now this is going to be an interesting ingredient. I'm not making banana wine, but you'll see. We got some black tea bags. I'm going to use these to add some astringency to the wine, since peaches don't have a lot of tannins. I've also got some citric acid over here. This is going to help keep the peaches from turning brown and getting a bit of an off flavor. I'm going to make a simple syrup, but I'm going to be adding the bananas and the tea bags in along with the citric acid. I've washed these bananas. I'm just going to cut the ends off. And I'm going to chop these up, peel and all, into 1/4 inch round slices. I'm going to use 1 banana per gallon. These bananas combined with the citric acid and tea bags with that little bit of sugar, it actually has sort of a peach flavor when they're done simmering down. So that's going to help add some more body to the wine and help boost the peach flavor when it's done. Oftentimes when people make peach wine, they lose a lot of the peach flavor, and I think a lot of that has to do with using unripe peaches. So here we are at the stove. Get our tea bags in there and our bananas. We're just going to give a little sprinkle of the citric acid. That's also going to help keep the bananas from turning brown. I'm just going to add in my first 4 pounds of sugar. Now because how ripe my peaches are, I don't think I'm going to need a full 12 pounds for this 6-gallon batch. So I'm just going to start off with this, and we'll adjust it after we get all the peaches crushed into it. I'm just putting enough distilled water on top to get the sugar dissolved, and we're going to simmer this for about 20 minutes. Now once that's done simmering, we're just going to pour it right into our mesh bag here. Now it's going to be hot, so we don't want to add our peaches to a hot liquid, so I'm going to pour in the rest of that distilled water that we used to simmer them in, and that should cool down enough. Now these peaches we're using, they're cling peaches, so the pit doesn't come right out, and that's okay in this application because they're fully ripe. I'm just going to crush them and tear them apart with my hands and pull the pit out. We want to use the skins and all. We just don't want the pit in there. Most of the peach flavor is going to be found in the skin and the pulp that's close to the pit. And with as ripe as these are, I really don't think I'm needing to add a lot more sugar. I think we're going to get pretty close to the ideal specific gravity, which is going to be 1.1. So here we're going to take our first measurement. This is where that mesh bag really comes in handy because it lets you dip right into just the juice and doesn't get clogged up with the pulp. If you don't have a mesh bag, you can also push a metal strainer down in there and use that to get some of the juice out without having to worry about the pulp. You want to make sure you fill the cylinder up enough that the hydrometer will float. And we're just going to read it right there at the surface level. And it looks like I have 1.08. So I need to add about 0.2 to get to my goal of 1.1. So I just made up some more simple syrup. This is just equal parts sugar and water. I used an online calculator to figure out how much sugar I need to add, and I'll leave a link to that in the description below. So I'm just going to get that stirred in really good, and then I'm going to take another measurement just to see if we've truly gotten our 1.1. That'll leave us with a 12% approximate alcohol content, and that'll make this wine shelf stable so it won't need to be refrigerated. Now it's time to add the Campton tablets. I use 1 per gallon, so I'm going to put them here between the spoon and just get crushed. I'll just make it easier to mix in. You don't have to do this if you're going to leave it in there for a longer period of time, but I'm just going to let this rest overnight before pitching the yeast. So I'm just going to break these up and stir them in really good. We're just going to close up the bucket until tomorrow. The yeast I'm going to be using is Red Star's Montrachet, also known as Premier Classic. it's going to leave the wine with a little extra fruity flavor, which is really going to help out with this peach wine. I'm going to add a little bit of sugar. I have about a half a cup of water here. I've warmed it up and let it cool down to 95 degrees Fahrenheit. And I'm just going to sprinkle the yeast on top and let it sink on its own over 20 minutes of proofing, and we'll come back and see how it is. If you're interested, I have got a copy of Jack Keller's yeast list for winemaking, where he describes the qualities of the different wine yeast and what flavors they impart on the wine and all the different characteristics available. I'll leave a link to this in the description to that as well. All right, it's been 20 minutes. Our yeast is proof. There's lots of foam on top. It's been fizzing. So it's time to pitch it. All right, let's remove the lid. Before we pitch this yeast in, I want to give it one more stir just to get that pulp good and moist. You never want this pulp to dry out. It'll create a perfect environment for mold and bacteria that can just kill your batch of wine or turn it into vinegar, and we don't want either of those to happen. And I'm not going to be stirring the yeast in right now because that'll actually just rocket this fermentation. Will probably boil over or foam over. So I'm just going to be putting these right on the top. I'm going to put some in the bag and put some along the side right in the juice directly. All right, we'll seal this bag back up and we're going to put the lid on. This time I'm going to fit it with an airlock. Some say you don't have to. I'd rather be safe than sorry though. It's the next day and it's time to break the cap or push down the cap, which is just pushing down the pulp. Again, re-moistening it. I'm going to have to do this twice a day for the next 7 days before we rack this off into the secondary fermenter. This mesh bag does make this a little bit easier. Again, I just want to open it up and stir it around just to get all that pulp good and wet. And we'll just seal that bag back up and push it back down and refit our airlock. I'm just going to keep repeating this for the next 7 days. I'll make another video when it comes time to rack it off into the secondary. So be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and thanks for watching.